We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life, finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases. Each week we pick a movie off of IMDb's Top 250 and dig into it. We're examining truth claims in critically acclaimed movies while also examining our own biases. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And this week we're joined by Steven. Are we using your last name, Steve?
Sure.
Steven Moats. Good friend of mine. In fact, when this show was originally conceived, he was the first person I pitched it to, and we were going to run with it.
He was the real original second daddy for this
That's
podcast.
Right. We just could not get our schedules to work out in such a way. Our first episode was going to be Fast and Furious.
That's part of the reason we didn't get it going. I just hate that
we
movie.
could have done a different movie, but a big part of it was scheduling. And then Jeff, when I approached you with it, we changed the idea a bit to go from just any movie to IMDb Top 250, and I think that there's some gold to that. But Steve, so happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
And excited to get into this movie. But before that, questions?
Questions, yeah. What's for dinner? No. So, Steven, we just got a couple questions we like to ask our guests so our audience members can kind of get a feel of what you're bringing to the conversation. And so, just like every week, our questions for you are, the first one is, what's your political bias? How would you describe yourself when it comes to politics, government, anything in that category of stuff?
I am an anarcho-capitalist and or voluntarist. Depends on what day of the week it is.
Mm-hmm. Can you now?
Not much of a difference.
I haven't heard that word before. The voluntarist.
Very similar.
Okay. What would you say is the differences between? We talk about anarcho-capitalists a lot. What would you say is the difference between that and voluntarist?
That is, oh boy, does not emphasize the importance of capitalism as much. It doesn't really care what the economic system is as much. Although pretty much everybody I know that falls into that category is also a capitalist.
Okay.
So
just like capitalist adjacent.
I mean, most voluntarists conclude that capitalism is natural and will happen in a voluntary exchange society. One of the big reasons people adopt voluntarism as a title over anarcho-capitalism is that both anarchism and capitalism carry with them a lot of baggage that voluntarism doesn't have.
Exactly. And essentially, all human actions or interactions should be voluntary without coercion from a state or anything else. For
any third party.
Any third party, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Religious biases. How would you describe yourself when it comes to religion, Christianity, any sort of faith-based things?
I'm one of those reform boys.
Hey.
But not one of the annoying ones. At least I try not to be. I'm not.
Why can't we get an annoying person on the show, Nelson?
I keep trying.
Reform. So Calvinist side of things. Okay. John Piper's peoples.
Sure.
Apologias guys.
Yeah, I like them.
Dr. White.
Have you
people?
Yeah.
Just to go a little deeper, were you raised in this specific reformed lifestyle? Like were your parents, or was this something that you kind of drove into yourself and journeyed to this landing here on your own?
So I was raised in a Baptist church. Well, I have to remember, but I think my parents kind of started getting into more reform stuff when I was like 11 or 12, something like that. But I really did not know what that was for a very long time after that. Probably not until, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago. And I'm 35 now, if that gives you any sort of time frame on it. Good. So yeah, it was a long journey. There was many years in which I wasn't going to church at all. I wouldn't have called myself a Christian. I didn't really believe in anything. And then, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, things changed and I started going again and got interested and actually talked to a mutual friend of ours, Brad. He was actually very instrumental in that.
Episode 9.
Yeah. Whether or not he knows it, I'm not sure. And don't let him hear this episode, and maybe edit this part out so he doesn't ever know. No, I'm kidding. I
think he already
can't
knows.
let it go. I know. I'm just messing around.
He's listening right now.
Yeah. He's always listening.
Yeah. Never stops.
But yeah, that's where I'm at.
This is a question that we don't typically ask, but because I've known you long enough to know, well, we've had enough conversations that I know that your political biases have not evolved terribly over the years.
No.
But since your religious biases have, what impact, if any, did your religious biases have on your political biases or vice versa?
Boy, that's a tough question. So I actually think they kind of fit perfectly. Like I've never really had a conflict between them.
Cool.
And I have always sort of been able to apply them to each other in many ways. Like they seem to go hand in hand to me. I think that in some ways I became a libertarian initially because of my religious beliefs, and then never left my political beliefs, but I did leave my religious beliefs. And then when they came back in, I was like, oh, these still just fit. And so it never really was much of a conflict, I guess. Yeah.
Interesting.
That satisfies. All right, last question. When it comes to films, movies, entertainment, do you have a favorite? How would you describe yourself when it comes to the big screen or small screen?
Well, I am a movie nerd. I wanted to work in film for most of my life up through high school. I worked on a film crew for a short film that, long story there, I could tell you later. But I was a key grip. I was also an extra, and I actually had some other lines. I was in it all over the place. That was when I was a senior in high school. So I've been into movies for forever. Some of my favorite movies are The Truman Show, because that movie kind of got me into movies. Like before The Truman Show, I just sort of watched kids' movies, I guess, things like that. Didn't really care too much about it. I was like, that was cool. But The Truman Show kind of got me thinking about movies. Yeah. Other favorites, I love Parasite. Came out a few years ago.
I've not seen
Absolutely phenomenal movie. I think it's one of the best movies ever made.
Okay.
And despite the name, has nothing to do with pandemics.
No, it sure doesn't.
Okay, there you go.
Brazil is another favorite of mine.
That one's fun.
Terry Gilliam, very
same director
libertarian.
as Monty Python.
Oh.
And basically it's an absurdist film about a overly bureaucratic totalitarian government. And one of the main characters is a renegade HVAC repair guy.
Yeah, Robert De Niro. He's awesome.
Oh wow! Okay.
And the whole movie is about a literal bug in the system. Like a bug falls into the system and creates all kinds of chaos in the bureaucracy, and it's hilarious
is
and
it done
enlightening.
In like the comedy style of like
very similar? Yeah.
Okay.
So he also did Time Bandits.
Yep.
And a few others.
Jabberwocky.
And they all have very similar comedy styles. I like Brazil, but the main character in it has kind of like these reverie dreams that I think really detract from the movie and muddy the plot. But otherwise, I think it's a really strong movie.
Brazil, is this fairly recent? I've not.
Oh no,
okay, this is more. Okay. And I mean, for fairly
kind
recent,
of like a cult classic sleeper hit.
Yeah.
For me,
it was on
recent,
top 250 for a very long time.
It was.
Was it really?
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah, fairly recent for me would encompass anything from like early or later childhood to now. It's like because I don't want to make myself feel old. So.
It came out before I was
In
born.
fact, Brazil might be on
what year
the
did it
Shadow
come out?
100.
Okay, it's a good country though. I've been there twice. So
I have not been
if that
there.
has anything to do with
A dear friend of mine was robbed at gunpoint in Brazil.
That checks out.
1985.
Yeah, if anyone listening from Brazil knows who that was, we'd love to.
It of course came on to the top 250 in the first year that the top 250 existed, that IMDb existed, 1996, and it fell off a couple times. It was most recently on the top 250 in 2010.
Okay, there you go, Brazil.
Where did it peak at? I feel like it got pretty high at one
It
point.
peaked at the very beginning. It came on at 26.
Okay, yeah.
Wow, top 10, well, almost top 10%. All right, cool. Any other movies you want to throw out there?
There's too many.
Okay.
I could go on forever.
That's fair. Okay. What movie are we talking about today, Nels?
We are talking about the A24 production, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which is notably different from all the other movies that we've covered in that it is not on the top 250.
As we record.
Now, we've talked about in the past, when we first started the show, we took a snapshot of
we froze the list.
We froze the list, and that was for our own spreadsheet data tracking and just to stay organized, with the intention that we would update the list once a year.
Yep.
And so we'll be updating the list in late August here. But this movie debuted on the top 250 April 7th, 2022 at 57. On May 17th, it peaked at 44th. But December 24th of 2022, so after we'd been doing this for a few months, it fell off the top 250. I know that this movie is particular favorite of Steven's.
Yeah.
And so we actually discussed it before we realized it was off the top 250, which, I mean, it was well into spring.
Right.
So it had already been off the top 250 for a while.
And this is a perk of us freezing the list too. Like, I mean, like I think I have no qualms with us doing one that's not on the list right now, because we're capturing a moment of history when time, it's like, I love this. So, and we're talking about a movie that kind of traverses time as well too. So it's kind of nice that maybe it's in another universe. It is on the top 250.
It certainly is. Yes.
But going forward, in an attempt to kind of avoid this again, to really keep the show to the top 250, going forward, we're only going to do movies that have been on the that have been out for at least a year. Correct. They don't have to have been on the top 250 for a year, but they have to have been out for at least a year, because the top 250 does have a bit of a recency bias.
This has been out for over a year.
This has been, yeah.
So
I mean, on the top 250 still, and out for over a year. Yeah.
Like January 2022 or something like that,
April.
Right?
April? It came out.
No, it was first released in March.
Okay.
And but it was like in Malaysia or something. So that's where it aired first.
Your Malaysia or my Malaysia?
Steve's Malaysia.
Steve's Malaysia. It came
Malay.
out. Okay.
Malay. Art Van Malay.
All right, so some stats on the movie.
Yes.
Released in 2022, like we discussed. It runs about 2 hours and 19 minutes, depending on when you stop it. If you stop it at the first set of credits, then it's a lot shorter.
But an hour and a half.
If you've watched the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Directed by the Daniels, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. I think
it's funny that the more Anglo name is the one that
is the one that I'm
nervous with.
It's Scheinert. Scheinert. I hope I'm not butchering that. But these two producers also did the Swiss Army Man movie,
which is also an A24 movie.
Awesome movie.
And they actually are both attached to an episode of the Skeleton Crew for the new Disney Plus Super Star Wars episode that's coming out, series that's coming out.
Okay.
Starring Jude Law. So they are attached to a Disney Plus episode, not the series, but just an episode of the Skeleton Crew that's coming out.
And they've done some like Adult Swim type.
Correct.
They've music videos before Swiss Army Man.
And they work together mutually. Like there's
They're like the Coen brothers.
There's not much, or the Russo brothers. Like there's not much that they've done without each
or
other.
the who did Stranger Things?
Duffers?
The Duffer brothers.
Something like that,
The
yeah.
Duffer brothers, yeah.
Duffer.
Currently
Who's
on
counting?
IMDb, as we're recording, it's 7.8 out of 10 stars. As we've discussed, it is off as of today's recording. Yeah. Rotten Tomatoes, it's 93%, and with Tomato Meter and with the audience, it's 86%. So very, very good numbers still on both ends of those. Nelson, do you have the budget of this movie?
So really not impacted much by inflation. There's only been, according to the inflation metrics that we use, about 5% inflation from last year. Steve and I would both say it's more than that. But 25 million.
That's low.
It is very low. In fact, it is for like the amount of money spent and the return on it. It's the most successful movie A24 has done. But when you're watching it, like a lot of the sci-fi-esque type stuff is pretty low budget. And they do really well with it.
It's amazing that they pulled this movie off for that little. It really is.
It's impressive.
Yeah. It is, certainly.
And it really makes you question, because the special effects were great, the soundtrack was great, like cinematically and entertainmently wise, I have no issues. There was animation, there was CG, it was just it's pretty much Spider-Verse, they were pulling all different types of things and aspects of this stuff. It was very well done for that price.
Bringing up Spider-Verse, I actually saw a meme yesterday that was Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, the new Spider-Verse movie, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. And it was Everything Everywhere All at Once and the Spider-Verse movie were two characters kind of like slapping Doctor Strange and we're like, that's how you do a multiverse movie.
I didn't see Multiverse of Madness yet. But
It's fine.
It's good world building or universe building at this point. Benedict Cumberbatch.
It's got balls of pizza. What more could you ask for?
It does. It does. I think this was cool. And, it was, I'm going to mess up his name. I'm so sorry. Ki Hu Kwan's return to cinema.
Yeah.
In 20 years.
Was his return?
Yeah. This is his first return to cinema in 20 years.
Have you seen, Michelle, who's the leading lady?
Michelle Yeoh.
Michelle Yeoh and he also starred together in the new Disney Plus series, American Born Chinese.
He's in that?
He is.
Ooh.
And he basically plays himself in that.
That's fun.
And there's like a Friends reunion type moment where he used to be the star in this 90s sitcom within the show. And he talks about how for a lot of time it was really difficult for him to get work.
Yeah.
And I really felt like like the writers had given him an opportunity to talk to the camera and talk to Hollywood about some of the issues in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But, it's a shame that he was out of Hollywood for so long. Yeah. But I mean, Short Round from Indiana Jones, Gadget from the Goonies,
yes.
And then also he was in UHF, I believe.
He also
isn't he the karate instructor in UHF?
I'm not familiar with UHF.
Man,
I'm looking that up right now.
Oh,
you might be right.
I'm pretty sure.
You might be right.
Hold on.
I'm getting it confused with Wheel of Fish guy.
So it's Weird Al Yankovic.
I think it's the same character.
That's not him.
So UHF was a movie that Weird Al Yankovic made where he parodied movie making basically. And
it does not have him on the roster.
Okay, there is a Chinese actor which I thought was him. I've always thought it was him. And he's like a karate instructor, just a zany character. But, as Gadget in Goonies, as Short Round in Indiana Jones, he's
in Encino Man?
Yes, he is. He is. But he is a terrific actor, I think.
He did do some
really
stuff
shines
outside
in
of
He's
screen.
fantastic.
He did stunts and stuff for movies and stuff. So he still stayed involved, but there in some of the stuff I was doing to research this movie and stuff after watching, he did have a hard time in Hollywood. He was outcasted a lot and stuff, and he didn't have an enjoyable season, which led to his not wanting to be on screen. But he still stayed involved and stuff, and he was doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff.
And then Michelle Yeoh, she's has a long career. Yeah. She starred in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is probably the thing people will know her most from. But she's been in a lot of stuff. And within the movie, when they're showing her alternate universe self, where she became a movie star, a lot of that footage is just actually her on red carpets,
right? From Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah,
which is the red carpet stuff is from the Crazy Rich Asians movie
exclusively.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because they acknowledged that movie once.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
And then so all the red carpet stuff is from when she did that movie.
And I think Crazy Rich Asians is also an A24 movie. I think.
I'm not sure.
It didn't come up on my list, but that was a great movie. I like
A24 releases some great movies.
And as of right now, not a single top 250.
That is very surprising.
Yeah, as of right now, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
that is very surprising.
But it's art house stuff, and that doesn't typically do well on the top 250.
Sure. Not with the masses.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of their horror stuff is fantastic.
Yeah.
They're releasing the best horror movies these days, in my opinion.
If I were into horror movies, I'd be thrilled about that.
Yeah. I love horror.
There's two more notable cast members in this. We've got Jamie Lee Curtis, who rounds out the big three of the cast.
Yeah.
She was incredible. I don't think I've ever seen her in something where I've been disappointed by her acting. She's fun on screen.
Freaky Friday.
That actually, it's a fantastic movie.
No, I know. I'm just going through movies. It's True Lies.
True Lies is kind of a stinker.
The Halloween movies.
True Lies is a lot of fun.
The Halloween movies.
Okay.
The yogurt commercials.
Oh yeah.
Stay regular.
True. Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Truvia. She's the spokesperson for Truvia, and it's all about poop.
Yeah. Because she's geriatric. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I saw a thing recently where Johnny Knoxville says that he regularly gets mistaken for Jamie Lee Curtis.
That's awesome.
Johnny Knoxville's great.
He's got a new show called The Prank Panel.
I saw that with
Eric Andre.
Eric Andre, there it is.
And then a woman whose name I don't know and I know I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
I'll have to check it out. I love Eric Andre and Knoxville.
It's ABC friendly,
It's
right?
essentially
which
punked.
takes some of the edge of off Knoxville and Eric Andre.
Yeah.
But it's probably the edgiest thing I've ever seen ABC produce, and it is as psychotic as you'd expect it to be.
Yeah.
If it's anything less than psychotic and Eric Andre's involved, he's not involved enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knoxville too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the last notable cast member that I recognized was Jenny Slate. I know her from Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And she's been in a bunch of other stuff. Like that's where I was first introduced to her, and she's a great actress. Like
she's a good actress.
She's minor in the movie, but she is in the movie. That's the last one I recognized.
She's a good actress. I don't like her personally. There was a panel she was on with Norm Macdonald, and she didn't like Norm. And how do you not like Norm Macdonald?
The greatest.
And so I've
comedian of
judged
all
her
time.
character based on that.
Okay, well, I won't give you my opinions about Norm Macdonald then.
If they're anything other than he's the greatest comedian of all time, they're wrong.
We are in my house. Just want to remind you, gentlemen, there. Anyways, moving on. So that's the cast of the movie. I've never seen this. This is my first time watching the movie. Steven, you've mentioned you've watched this movie before.
Yeah.
Is this recently just introduced to it, or did you watch it when it first came out?
I didn't see it in theaters. Okay. I saw it as soon as I could.
A24 often doesn't go to theaters.
This one definitely did.
No,
I know my parents saw it in the theaters.
This was definitely big screen.
I saw it as soon as I could at home, and I've seen it 2.5 times more since then. Half was yesterday. I was watching it, and I was like, I need to refresh myself on this movie a little bit, and I got halfway through, and I was like, I remember this very well. I only watched it a month ago.
1.5 times.
Yeah. But my half was because I fell asleep. Yeah, I gotta stop watching these at the middle of the night. But that's neither here nor there, or everywhere, everything at all at once. Yeah, this was my first introduction to the movie as well. I'd heard about it, and I knew about it before we started the podcast.
Right.
I did something intentional when we started the podcast to kind of stay away from movies that I knew were on the list that I hadn't seen before.
Right.
Watching them right before we record.
Without discussing it, we both did that.
Right. So this was one that I waited to watch, even though I anticipated it. I really wanted to watch it. But I was like, nope. I'm going to wait for the episode now so it'll be fresh. And we'll get to more of that later. But yeah, this was my first experience with it.
Yeah, without discussing doing that, you and I both started doing that. I watched this like 2 weeks before I approached you about doing this podcast with me. So I got in there like basically right when it came out.
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten enough about the movie that I really enjoyed it this extra watch through. Mm-hmm. There were things that I'd forgotten entirely were in this movie. Now that I know who I've recommended it to, I'm like, ooh.
I did exactly the same.
Yeah. I know which things you're referring to, and yeah, for that reason, I would be delicate.
Beat a man to death with
Yes. Yeah. 2 of them.
I do.
The plugs.
So I don't know how I didn't notice this, but the first time I watched the movie, like, of course, like you can't miss the plugs because it's an integral part of the plot, actually.
Yes.
But somehow I had missed, the first time I watched it, I had missed that the trophies were not just shaped somewhat like a plug. Like, the trophies just are plugs.
It's a great joke.
And I said, yeah, I mean, they're tax auditors, and the trophy they win for being great tax auditors are plugs, and that's just perfect.
It's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Around the table here again, like, you guys like the movie? Like, so what's your initial thoughts? Just first reactions, fans, thumbs up, like...
I love this movie, and I hate everything it has to say.
Okay, well, we'll say that for just a little bit later.
Yeah.
Okay, Nelson?
I love the movie. Steve and I have talked a bit about it since I first saw it, and so I knew his position on it, and so I went back into it expecting to have similar views. I think that the movie really redeems all of the terrible things it says in the final act. But I look forward to getting into that. One other thing, though, that I want to bring up real quick that I know Steve's going to push back on is that I don't have a whole lot of notes for this because there's not a lot of dialogue in the movie. Now, when I said this right before production, Steve was like, no, there's a lot of dialogue. And I guess more what I mean is there's not a lot of consequential dialogue, like where they're making claims about what the world is. Now, there are some big claims about what the world is in the movie.
Portrayed in actions.
And in larger discourses and stuff. But as far as like... So like there's some movies where we watch it, and I've got like 2 pages of just quotes of making all kinds of claims about the movie. And this one, I got about a half a page. So
it's not that. I suppose you're right in some ways. It's just that the dialogue where they do talk about things, the things that they're talking about are such gigantic things that it's hard for me to reconcile. Not a lot of like. I suppose in a sense you're right. They don't talk about it all the time, but the everything bagel scene and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a whole lot to.
There's a lot of depth.
There's a whole lot of depth to what the movie is about.
Absolutely.
And there's a whole lot of dialogue and an explanation of how the movie works, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to follow than it has any right to be, which is really neat. It's like a testament to the writing.
At first, I was because like I'm not a critical thinker, so like I try to be, but like just in general, like there's a lot of things that go over my head. But at first, when it first started, when we first see I'm trying to remember the moment. She has that first or the screen twitches, and then it goes into that first explanation of it. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have a hard time keeping track. But it really wasn't. It ended up staying very like in a way believable.
Sure.
Like in a fictional way, it was like, oh, okay, I can see the logic in that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can believe this. I can get behind this. I was very worried that it was going to be a very nerdy, like the Zach Galifianakis meme with all the math symbols over his head. I was afraid it was going to be like that, where I'm just trying to put these things
Charlie
together.
Day with the
Yeah. So, but no,
who is Pepe Silvia?
They did a very good job keeping it abstract, but also keeping you not lost within the depth of the world building. It kept you into the story. You know, if that makes sense. Yeah.
The first time we watched it, my wife, who does not like sci-fi really at all, she watched it with me, and she almost did exactly what you did, except instead of going along for the ride, I think she just tuned it out. So then she's just like, I didn't get it at all. But I think she just kind of stopped trying at one point. We watched it again, and I said, really, just give it a chance. It's not really that hard to follow. And she did, and she's like, okay, it wasn't that hard to follow at all. You're right. I still don't like it. So what can you do?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I had the same experience with this movie that I had with Avatar. When
The Last Airbender?
No, the blue one. The blue ones. The water
Blue
ones.
Dances with Wolves.
The Titanic sequel.
It's also blue
Pocahontas.
There's submarines in both. Eiffel
What's
65.
one about the French Indian War?
Smurfs.
The French Indian War.
Smurfs.
I'm not sure.
The Last of the Mohicans?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Filmed in Chimney Rock,
Oregon.
North Carolina, outside of Asheville. Random.
It's one of those
fact.
things where like I don't know why I know that, but I know that
I only know that because I was in Chimney Rock, North Carolina 2 years ago, and that's one of their claims to fame.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That and Stephen Moats went there.
Yeah. And Dirty Dancing was also filmed there.
That's a reason not to go.
Yeah.
I had very high expectations for this movie going in. It won a lot of awards. I watched the awards, like the clips of all three of them coming up on stage and just being like just super humble and super honored. Like I was very much like, okay, this is creating a lot of hype. I enjoyed this way more than I did Avatar. Avatar let me down in every way. This movie was like, okay, this is good. But by the end of it, I just felt it was okay. I have notes. Like I enjoyed it, but I think because I went in so high of expectations,
Sure.
I just came out going, yeah, that was different. So I'm kind of neutral about this movie, but in a positive way.
Okay, that makes sense. On the positive side
on the positive side of neutral, yeah.
The movie does have really fun foreshadowing too that I picked up the second time through it. I mean, it'd been a year, but some fun foreshadowing in this movie.
There are even little parts where I just noticed this last night, where you can almost see her snap her head up a couple different times when you don't even know what's going on yet with that. I mean, even in the first scene of the movie.
Yeah. The black circles, that are mixed with that we now realize are bagels and stuff. Like,
I mean, the first time we see the Alpha universe, there's a reference to the fact that there's no donuts, no bagels anymore.
Yeah.
In a bit of graffiti.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of time writing this.
The details,
it's very clear.
And there's even things in it like the scene closer to the end where that kind of the big fight battle happens and stuff. There's scenes where the daughter, depending on when the camera switches to the next moment of that scene, she's in a different place.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily fit, like, because she's not
in any other movie. This would be like a mistake, a choreography mistake.
But it's just showing how like she's she's involved with all of it. Like it's just showing her how like,
she is everywhere.
She's right. And so I just think even these things are like, wait, wasn't she? Okay, got it. I go like it just fits. Yeah. It was just the music, the way the music kind of moves you to the next moments and stuff. I loved the scene with the rocks.
Oh, that scene's awesome. Yeah.
Like, and just the simplistic
subtitles,
knowing everything going into that scene, and just the way they break everything down. And it's just they share that. Like, just that was probably my favorite moment.
Yeah,
and it was like probably the easiest to produce too.
Right, but
no music, no sound.
Yeah, but just the way it fit into the story, and on the emotional level, I'm like, wow, like I just wanted you to be a rock.
Yeah,
that was a great writing moment.
The movie does a really good job of bringing you in and out of the action, and like it can have really interesting, intense, but also silly and goofy action at the same time, and then immediately move to something very heartfelt, and it never feels jarring. Like it do a very good job of smoothing out all of those transitions in a way that makes a lot of sense and keeps the story moving. It doesn't feel terribly long, although there are parts that drag a bit. But
part one of the movie is an hour and a half.
Yeah,
the everything section.
And I remember the first time watching it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're only in part. How many parts are there? Like, how long is this movie?" I remember pausing it specifically at that point, going, "Whoa, what am I
more
in
than
for?"
half?
Yeah, but it kind of needed to be, and it makes a lot of sense.
Any other basic thoughts before we get into some of the biases that we pulled out of this, or some of the heavier, deeper things that any other just?
So IMDb has a search function where you can list 2 different movies and see if there's any overlapping cast and crew. This movie shares a composer with A Clockwork Orange.
Really?
Huh.
Yes.
Like the composer?
No.
Or okay.
So a lot of movies we've covered, there's a composer that does all the music.
Right.
With both of those movies, both Everything Everywhere All at Once and A Clockwork Orange, it's a soundtrack of existing music. And the William Tell Overture is used in both.
Okay. That's
never put those pieces together, but yeah.
So that's definitely our connection to A Clockwork Orange.
We did it.
Another movie I love but can never recommend to anybody.
I could recommend Everything Everywhere All at Once a lot quicker.
Oh, absolutely.
No question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not even close.
But bizarrely, it's like this almost the same reason that I'd be reticent to recommend it. It's like, well, there's some sexual content in this that's a little weird.
Yeah.
Much less than
much less.
much.
It's the same reason, just not to the same degree.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. All right. So who's got the first heavy hitter topic here?
I would like to start with some of the minor ones, if it's all the same.
We're just on the minor ones. Nelson, weren't you listening?
I was not.
That was
okay.
mine.
I'm just kidding.
I don't listen when I'm speaking.
No, what you got?
Early in the movie, and I think it's really interesting that they chose to include this. They're being audited. The laundromat is, and it's a Chinese-owned laundromat. And so rather than say that it's because our books are a mess and we're not paying our taxes, which that's a whole other conversation, Michelle Yeoh's character says that Jamie Lee Curtis's character is targeting their community.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that that's a really interesting, like, rather than acknowledge, yes, I've got some responsibility here, just claim racism, right? Like, just...
Yeah, but she also tries to explain it like, this is what you told us to do. She tries to say, like, hey, we've been here before. We're only doing this because you told us to do this last time. And that's maybe why she feels as though she's being targeted.
But we also know from that same conversation that the family is not doing what the auditor told them to.
It's sure. It's what they thought they understood.
Right.
Yes.
Which is why the auditor said, please bring your daughter so she can translate.
Correct.
Yep.
Which they didn't do.
True. You're absolutely right.
Now, that all presupposes, of course, that taxation is legitimate and the audit's legitimate, which Steve and I both have very strong opinions on.
They'll talk about that in the sequel.
We could talk about that for hours and half. But that whole scene is great. I mean, it sets up a whole bunch of different things. It sets up the sort of feeling of sadness and remorse, maybe not remorse, but sort of empathy for the family. But it also establishes the entire rest of the movie in a tax office, in an IRS office, which I find very interesting.
Those fight scenes in the IRS office.
Oh man, the fanny pack and grabbing rocks out of the aquarium is glorious.
And honestly, like I feel like that's how what's the Goonies character?
Gadget.
Gadget. I feel like that's how Gadget would have, like, that's who he would have grown up to be. Like, I can, with the fanny pack and just having things to use to get through situations, like, I feel like that was just an adult Gadget.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause I'm
that
way
makes
more
sense.
familiar, well, except I forgot his name. I've
Short
seen
Round.
Goonies way more times.
Honestly,
Then-
the short round character is kind of similar. Like
Definitely.
I'm very unfamiliar with that.
It's not the
it's been a
worst
long
Indiana
time.
Jones movie, but it's the worst of the original three.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. But it's still a good movie. I love Waymond. Everybody loves Waymond.
That's our show.
That might
folks.
be the episode title.
I was actually going to suggest that as the
Everybody
episode
loves
title.
Waymond.
Fantastic. Everybody loves Waymond.
Funny story, just an aside. You might have to cut this part, but I don't care. The first time I watched it, I thought for sure that they were making a joke about Asian people not being able to pronounce R's. And because I never noticed his name written on the divorce papers.
Right.
So I just thought his name was Raymond and everyone was saying it wrong.
I watch with subtitles so that I missed that. However, Workaholics, the TV show, has a character in it named Waymond, and he's in this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's one of the extras. He's one of the people that I can't remember if he's with which side he's on, but he's one of the people attacking Michelle Yeoh's character. Also in this movie that like I didn't recognize him the first time I saw him. First time I watched the movie, but I definitely recognized him
The
this
raccoon.
time. No.
Oh.
I love that.
The older kind of creepy guy that is one of the laundromat customers who's commenting on Michelle Yeoh's perfume, and he knows all the dance moves, that thing. He is in I Think You Should Leave, a couple different sketches, but my favorite one is where he plays Santa Claus. And not like he's acting as a man acting as Santa Claus. He is Santa Claus, but he's basically the same character. Like, it's just this greasy, terrible person.
That show's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Waymond in many ways is like the character that ties the whole movie together.
He's what redeems the nihilism.
Well, yes, but at the end, so here we go. How familiar are you with absurdism?
Absurdism,
Have
pretty
you met
pretty
Nelson?
familiar.
Well, depends on what you mean by absurdism, right? Like Camus absurdism.
Absurdism, I'm familiar with. Nihilism and stoicism, I'm not as well read on as I would like to be.
Yeah, I would say, in my opinion, this movie leans much more towards absurdism in the end as a solution to nihilism, which is basically what absurdism was when Albert Camus came up with it. You know, you had nihilism and existentialism, and then absurdism was sort of in a sense, the cure for those two things, which was because nihilism and existentialism kind of just lead to people being absolutely miserable because everything is meaningless. Nothing matters. Who cares? There's no point to any of this. There is no meaning. Absurdism continues that and agrees with all of that, but then says basically your meeting should just be to live as absolutely free as you possibly can, so that just even your act of living so free and not caring about anything because everything is so meaningless, you can find some sort of meaning in the meaninglessness by living so hard, essentially.
Or whimsically.
Sure.
Absurdly.
It could be. It doesn't have to be. It could be however you want to live. It's just sort of, you're not even trying to find any meaning. It's just, we're all on this journey together. Maybe something I can do might help somebody out in some way, so might as well do it. Like the tenets to absurdism are essentially, step one is you could just kill yourself, which he does not suggest. I do not suggest. Don't do that. That's a bad idea.
But that is, within the movie, that is the first solution to the nihilism.
Yes, which is why I think this movie is all about absurdism.
Well, actually, sorry, the first solution to the nihilism is find somebody else that can understand it the way I do.
Yeah.
And then it's, now that we both understand it, let's kill ourselves.
Right. And then step two is what Camus would have said is the leap of faith, which is religion or whatever else you want to go with, which obviously he didn't believe in any of that. And then step three, or possible option three, I suppose, is just to live as hard as you can. I can't think of a better way to say it, but just go all out, do anything you want, do everything you want, and really just live. Because,
and you dislike that message?
Yeah, because things aren't meaningless and there is meaning. And I think it actually is It's better than nihilism or existentialism, but at the same time, it starts from a flawed premise on its face in that there is absolutely no meaning that anyone can ever find ever. I'm a Christian, so I don't believe that at all.
The way I digested that final act, where it really introduced the foil to nihilism, right? Through the whimsy and go with the flow, find joy nature of Waymond. And I do think that you can root this in sound doctrine. Is that there's times where things, actually this would be Ecclesiastes, right? There are times and seasons of your life where things will just feel meaningless. Now, I agree with you with the statement that you made that as Christians there is meaning. But that doesn't change the fact that, to paraphrase David, right? Like, why are you so far from me?
Sure.
Why do I feel like there's no meaning? Why does it all feel like spitting into the wind?
Sure. But there's a big difference between why do I feel this way and there is no.
Well, I think that the nihilist and existentialist movements came out of, I feel this way and it must be true.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And so I think it's hubris, obviously. Depression has a level of narcissism with it.
Definitely.
Right? Like,
certainly.
Like, you're not obsessed with how great you are, but you are obsessed with yourself. And I think that existentialism, when you start to feel that, like, meaninglessness of life, and actually this, I think, 2 episodes back, we were talking about, 2 episodes released, so this is like 4 episodes back, we talked about about legacy.
Hamilton.
We were talking about legacy, and I said that Scripture tells us it's a blessing to have a quiet life. And that when I'm feeling like I'm not having an impact, I have to remind myself that to have a quiet life, to have a quote-unquote inconsequential life on the global or historic stage is a blessing in and of itself. And I have to intentionally meditate on that. Some friends of mine were having a conversation recently where they're talking about being Christian mothers and how growing up as young women, they had this idea that their role was in the home and that it was only in the home. And they kind of adopted this, I may not be a world changer, but I'm raising world changers. And the way their conversation went is they were discussing how defeating that is, how you're setting a bad example for your kids. And I didn't really understand their conclusion from the conversation. I think what they were trying to get towards is, and so you should conclude that what you're doing is important and you are changing the world. And I disagree with that framing. I think the proper framing is that I'm called to minister within my family, and you should take joy in that. And that's like, and of course the whole issue of women should be within the home and all of that exegesis that needs work separate from, right? That's a whole other conversation.
A huge can of worms there.
It's a whole other conversation. Yeah. And you know, they accurately talked about how the Psalms 31 wife, she has roles outside of the home. But her priority is first and foremost her family. Something that we often miss when we talk about that is that at that time, the man's role was largely work-oriented, but most men worked out of their homes and from home, and children didn't go to school. They worked with their fathers. So family looked very different than it does now. All of that is kind of an aside from, we need to find meaning in our everyday. We need to choose to find meaning. We need to choose to find joy in that.
I don't disagree with any of that.
As an antidote to nihilism.
But at the same time, I think if you are rooted in, I need to find meaning even though everything is inherently meaningless and nothing matters, you're always going to end up back at that same point. No matter how hard you try, in my opinion, that circle's going to come back around and you're going to come right back to everything is meaningless.
Yeah.
Nothing matters. What is the point of any of this?
A philosophical Ouroboros.
Sure.
Ooh, yeah. Like those lights you see in Alaska.
That's the one.
Yeah.
The Ouroboros.
Exactly. Yes.
Snake eating its own tail.
Yeah.
You're thinking of the
snakes. Oh, yeah. The Southern Lights.
Yes, exactly. But no, I just think that, especially these days, existentialism is very popular, especially with...
Can you define that for us? Because I'm not sure that I could properly define it.
Okay, I can tell you. What people would say. Oh boy.
Tell us. Let's start with a caveat that you may be wrong.
Oh,
Tell
of
us
course.
That way nobody can attack in the comments.
Steven is proclaiming to be.
Steven is all knowing.
We all know this.
No, I'm just kidding.
We all know that he's all knowing.
In my entire life, up until maybe, I don't know, the last 5 years, right? So 30 years, the term existential dread was not part of the common vernacular. And now I hear people use it all the time. We are now in society so depressed, so anxious, so full of mental health problems, so full of all of these other things. And why
are you coming at me like this, Stephen?
Well, I'm again, I have anxiety. I take medicine for it, which I'm on stopping. Not that really matters to anybody listening to this, but I'm weaning myself off. Yeah, I think a lot of it, and I would say, well, a vast majority of it comes from this idea that nothing matters and everything is meaningless. It really all boils down to the fundamental, what is the meaning of life, that philosophers have been discussing for centuries. And more I'm seeing people land in, there isn't one, nothing matters, everything is meaningless. And it's becoming more and more popular. I have heard more and more people say it than any other time. And then any time I talk to a lot of people. You know me. I am, if I go play trivia at pub trivia, which is one of my favorite things to do, I end up talking to everybody sitting there. I get to know people all the time. I have been doing that. I have been talking to people at bars specifically. I mean, I used to be in sales. I used to get so many sales just from sitting down with people and talking to them at bars, talking to them about their life, talking to them about all kinds of different things. And I continue to do that even though I'm not in sales anymore. And that was never a theme that came up. If it very rarely people would say things like that. But these days, almost without any prompting, I'm having people, especially younger folks, talk about everything is meaningless. Nothing matters. That's why, I mean, in many ways, I think that's what is that's not a word.
Led to the rise of.
Listen, we're just going to use that now. Listen, it saves a lot of words. Led to the rise of promiscuity that is just run rampant, and this sort of even my body, my choice, and you're talking about abortion and all kinds of other things. Nothing matters. Who cares? What does it matter if I kill this thing? It doesn't make any difference. Nothing matters. It's all meaningless. There is nothing else. The consequences of my actions, I shouldn't have to suffer those. We talk about people, especially in our circles, people don't want to take responsibility for their actions. They don't want to do any of these kinds of things. And in my opinion, it all kind of boils down to nothing matters. Everything is meaningless. So why should I care?
I think that I just think
it's dangerous.
I think it boils down a little further than that.
Well, it boils all the way down to sin.
Yeah,
but
God is dead, right?
Sure.
And if you conclude that there is no God, nihilism, existentialism logically flow out of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
There is no meaning after that.
Yeah, and
there is no right and wrong.
No, there can't be.
Right. As they say in this movie, right is a tiny box invented by people who are afraid.
Exactly. And that is another thing that is just run rampant these days is oh, come on, brain, is moral relativism. And moral relativism is just, again, an extension of existentialism, essentially, or nihilism, because nothing matters. I can do whatever. Doesn't matter what I do to somebody else. I mean, it really doesn't matter. But it's sort of funny because you can see people wrestle with this all the time in their actions, right? I'm talking for a long time here, and I apologize. But
do not apologize.
People's actions say that things definitely matter, and there definitely is right and wrong. You have so many activists and everything these days, from everything from Black Lives Matter, you have trans rights activists, you have, the ladies saying, I want to kill all my babies, and all these different things and everything in between. So their actions say things matter and things are right and wrong, but their mouth says nothing matters and nothing is right and wrong. And they're having that internal struggle. And I think movies like this are trying to reinforce the nothing matters and everything is meaningless. And I just don't think I think it's a dangerous game. Yeah. Which is why I say I love the movie and I don't like what Ez is saying.
I've been enjoying this conversation because I do feel out of place between, like, because you're saying a lot of words I'm just not familiar with.
I am so sorry.
You can always tell us to stop and define.
And you know, I've been learning a lot by listening, so that was not a complaint. What I'm saying, like, but as you're talking though, like, I'm thinking of moments in the movie that some of you have already brought up and stuff. Like, I keep picturing the bagel.
Yeah.
And like, because you guys are, in a good way, you guys are going back and forth and you continue to use that symbology of circling back.
Yep.
And I'm just like, what we're talking about right here, I feel like is the epicenter of why this movie exists.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
There's parts of this movie that are meant to just be redundant, are meant to just bring you back to the beginning and go, you decide. Just listening to you two, like, actually makes me enjoy some aspects of this movie more because I'm like,
that's what they were like. You can see what they were doing with
right. I'm just like, this is nice because obviously like, the three of us come from a faith perspective, so it's hard to put ourselves in some of these experiences because we do believe there is a meaning.
Even when I would have probably called myself agnostic or borderline atheist, I still never went to moral relativism, and I don't really know why. I mean, I do know why, but because I have always been, well, not have always, but I've been a Christian even during those times when I was totally away. I was still indwelled with the Holy Spirit, who was basically trying to tell me, hey, bro, you're on the wrong track here. But it's never made any sense to me. It feels like it's a self-defeating sort of philosophy. And again, it kind of just bears itself out in the fact that no one's actions convey moral relativism. They just don't. They defeat it constantly.
Jeff, you and I discussed this in our last episode. Steve, I actually don't know the answer to this question, so I'm going to pitch it to you. Was Ludwig von Mises a Christian?
I don't know.
Okay. I think he was not.
Googlebot.
Ask the Googlebot.
Mises' complicated view of Christianity.
Okay. I will take that to mean he was not.
Mises isn't a theologian or philosopher of religion. He is an economist who always seeks to defend the free market. Mises debunks the religious case for the state. Yeah, there's nothing.
Pretty much.
There's nothing
Okay.
definitive here.
The reason I bring that up is because in his book Human Action, which Bob Murphy really does a terrific job of summarizing in his book Choice, he talks about how the very fact that we have action reveals that we think that the future is undefined and can be modified. If you didn't think the future could be changed, you wouldn't act.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that reveals that even nihilists aren't true nihilists because they don't think everything is meaningless.
Right.
If they make any action.
Right.
Even with moral relativism, there's been a lot of apologists who have done incredible work revealing that that's not logically sound.
That's not even particularly difficult.
No, it's not. But despite that,
yeah,
there are still lots of people that buy into it.
Isn't it crazy though?
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with socialism, right?
Yes.
Despite the fact that it's been refuted and proven to not work, people still buy into it.
By Mises.
Yeah, man, was he ever something? So yeah, just to piggyback, just from a secular worldview, we can debunk the whole idea that everything is meaningless.
Yeah.
Now, if you are a person who is of faith and you struggle with nihilism, I really don't think there's a better part of the Bible to read than Ecclesiastes, which is all about how everything is vapor. Everything is just pissing into the wind. That's my words, not his. And that really kind of calls back. Yeah. Yeah, Jesus wept and pissing in the wind. Jeff, and this kind of calls back to our conversation over the movie Into the Wild.
Yeah.
Because that movie was very much about a struggle with nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
He felt like everything in his life was meaningless. He burnt it all up and or gave it away and hit the road.
While setting out to find
in search of meaning.
Meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything he thought was meaning wasn't meaning, but he did believe that meaning existed.
Yeah, and then according to the account of the movie, based off of his journaling, it seems that he realized meaning, but then tragically died before he could enact it. And where he saw meaning, which is repeated in Ecclesiastes, repeated in a lot of the writings of the Greeks as well, is in time invested with other people, which is actually kind of why I want to come back to this movie. You say that Waymond's character represents absurdism, What I really saw
the
there,
whole movie represents absurdism.
Yeah. Fair.
Not
dog,
really Waymond's
The hot dog
character.
fingers represent
and
absurdism.
the movie does get increasingly absurd over time. What I mean, though, is that Waymond's character, especially in that last section, what I really saw there was this is a character who finds meaning by investing his time with his family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more important than anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can miss that if you don't get the context of his divorce filing, which is so brief you can blink and miss it. But basically, he's trying to crack through that busy shell she has and just shock her into like, oh, there's problems in our marriage we need to solve.
He does not want.
He doesn't want a divorce.
No, certainly not. No. Yes, Waymond is Waymond is sort of the antidote to everything, but at the same time, I don't think.
Would you say he's an antidote to chaos?
Yeah, I
wonder if Jordan Peterson would agree.
I mean, well, in many ways.
How many rules to life do you think Waymond has?
Well, all of them, because there's infinite Waymonds.
That's true.
Yeah, it's a very hard question to answer how many or anything like that for a movie like this, because the answer is all
infinite.
Infinite, yes, forever, everywhere, all at once, somewhere, someplace at a particular moment. Anyway, I think Waymond is. Well, I'm trying to think. What's the very last line in the movie? What's she say? She says nothing matters, right? Isn't that the very last thing that
I don't know the last line
Evelyn
of the movie.
says?
And I couldn't find a script for this movie either. Evelyn, that's her name.
Yeah, Evelyn. She says something along the lines of, it's okay, nothing matters, and that is the end of the movie. That's like the takeaway. Even after all of what Waymond says, and to be honest with you, what Waymond says fits right into absurdism. It's finding your own little meaning in your family and things like that. That was Camus' sort of, and I could be, if I'm butchering absurdism, correct me in the comments, because I haven't read any of it in forever. I mean, I read The Myth of Sisyphus in like high school, I think, or the beginning of college. But like in the Myth of Sisyphus, he says something along the lines of, and you have to imagine Sisyphus happy. And like, that's kind of the whole point of the book. In that, even in his total mundane, rolling a stone up the hill and it falls back down, and he has to do it over again. You just sort of have to imagine him happy, or else why the heck would he be doing it?
Because he was cursed to do it for the rest of his life.
Well,
he didn't
Camus says you have
it.
to imagine him happy.
Camus is wrong. That's not what the story's about.
Well, but I don't disagree with you.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
No. What it all boils down to is essentially like you got to find those bits of meaning in your in your life, or to help other people out or whatever, in the meaninglessness. But it all still boils down to, it is still all meaningless. There is no meaning at all. It's just kind of whatever the heck you make of it. And maybe within the meaninglessness, you might help somebody else out who is also experiencing meaninglessness, because there is nothing else along the way.
I found a transcript.
Oh, did you? What's the last line of the movie?
It's something like
the last line is.
She says it to.
Sorry, what did you say?
Oh, okay. Okay.
But the last little bit of conversation is Deidre and Evelyn talking. Deidre, okay, yes. Happy to say I don't think things are better. This is an improvement, and I'm glad that you listened. But we have a problem because you listened, but you didn't listen, and that has to do with the Schedule C. You see, you did. Evelyn, did you hear me? Sorry. What did you say? Because they're back at the IRS.
Right. And she's daydreaming.
Right, she's daydreaming.
So is that the car? I thought it was at the car.
No, it's in the IRS office.
But they have the daughter with her this
okay,
time.
you're right.
Yeah, so
I mean, the scene at the car, at the...
Okay, that's a good 10 to 15 minutes from the end.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, you're talking about Sisyphus. Reminded me of what might be anecdotal, but I think is a true story out of the Nazi concentration camps. So there's a group of men who they couldn't be broken. They couldn't break their spirits. Mm-hmm. Every job that they assigned them to, the men would find meaning and value in the work. Mm-hmm. And one particularly cruel or brilliant, depending on how you evaluate it, officer commanded all the men to dig a hole. Didn't tell them what the hole was for, but they all, over the course of the day of digging, invented reasons why they might be digging the hole to attribute value to it. And then the next day, they dug a second hole. And then the third day, they took the dirt from the first hole and put it in the second hole. And on the fourth day, they took the dirt from the second hole and put it in the first hole. And It continued like this, and that's what broke them.
Mm.
And that's what Sisyphus always reminds me of. It's like I've had a job as a dishwasher, and I can find value in that.
Yeah.
But there's jobs where you're accomplishing nothing, and that is hard. And that's
It
actually
can be hard to be content, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where this movie starts. She has forgotten the value she's bringing.
Yeah.
Right? She has lost sight of the value she's creating in her work through her family and through her laundromat.
This is a total aside, but years ago, I this part of all of Finding Meaning, I completely agree with.
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing to do. In fact, years ago, I started writing a book about it didn't get very far.
About teenagers that could change into animals.
No, this is just silly. I was thinking about how like SpongeBob has the most meaningless job of being a fry cook at the Krabby Patty,
And he loves
and
his job.
he does the best job. He loves it. He kills it. He is the best darn employee you could ever find. And the whole book was going to
And
kind of be
Squidward's almost the opposite.
yeah, and the whole book was kind of going to be about being like SpongeBob, like try to be like SpongeBob in every situation you can. Where listen, this is the deck that life has dealt me, and I'm just going to make the most of it and do it the best I possibly can with a smile on my face. I think that's like a great part about SpongeBob. The book never went anywhere,
Love
but it was a
SpongeBob.
fun idea. I totally agree with that.
I think that's a book worth writing, and I can give you all kinds of scripture to make it a Christian book if you want to.
Sure, but
Saint SpongeBob specifically.
Jeremiah 29, 1 through 10. Skip all of it.
yeah, all of that is perfectly fine. None of that particularly matters to, in my opinion, again, I know I keep beating a dead horse here. None of it matters because everything is meaningless.
Right.
And nothing matters.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in the context of the movie, we know that they are church people.
Okay.
We know this from...
Wait, where is that?
We know this really only from two lines
I didn't pick up
of
pick up on
dialogue.
this. Okay.
The first line, and this is not specifically Christian culture, but what's her name?
Evelyn.
Evelyn says to Waymond, "We made a sacred promise." Now, that is not unique to Christian culture.
Certainly not. Yeah.
But then later, when in one of the parallel universes, they're in the van and Waymond's explaining why he filed for divorce. He said that Byron at church did the same thing, not because he was actually pursuing a divorce, but just to get his wife's attention. Right? And that's where we find out that this is a shock the system approach.
Yeah.
So we know from those two conversations that they are church people. Now, we can surmise from their daughter and her relationship with her girlfriend that it's either a very liberal church or that they've not been particularly
involved,
or
they just go.
I don't think those are fair accusations. Christian values have not been the most important thing in their upbringing with her, and so that's just something that I saw in there. And so it's interesting that it's a movie that deals with nihilism, and we agree that the antidote for nihilism is the realization that there is a God, and that we have these two characters that presumably have been raised or been exposed to Christian teaching and are nihilistic.
Okay, so kind of on the same topic, but kind of bringing it back a little bit from what my uneducated brain picked up. I got a more calmer version of what you guys are discussing, and this idea of like, actually, I got none of what you're discussing. Just being, but just
maybe I'm just totally wrong. But
there's no, but I see it now though. I see it now as what you're talking. So yeah, you guys are definitely onto it. Like, but how I perceived the story of Evelyn, because who's the main character in this? Like,
sure.
Obviously, the biggest thing that I pulled away from this was a mother-daughter relationship.
Definitely, yeah.
And the discontentment of her
and
job
father-daughter,
and her responsibles. Correct. Yeah. It's true. There's a generational thing there.
Gong.
But you see it throughout. Like, Evelyn has desires to have a relationship with her daughter, but doesn't know how to communicate. But then you see that she doesn't know how to communicate to her daughter because of we see flashbacks of how she was raised from her father, and we see that there was a rift between the two of them. So
the daughter in a Chinese household, you know.
The more
I'm sorry, it's a girl.
Yeah,
is a line in this movie.
Man, that was a rough line. Like, that was just a brutal
All three of us have
we know
daughters.
that happens.
Right.
Like
In China, they had a one-child policy, and girls would get put up for adoption or just abandoned.
And even now, like, and again, I'm not shaming anyone if people get disappointed when they do a gender reveal. Like, I get you can have a preference if you're hoping for something, but you see these gender reveal videos that are on YouTube and stuff of a parent just mad when they realize it's the opposite of what they want. And I'm just like,
I've never seen that, but I believe you that they exist.
Oh, they're frustrated, and I don't know why they come up on my feed. I don't seek those out.
Why would you post that?
That's my question. As someone who has
if you're
with,
visibly upset about the gender of your future child, why would you share that with the world?
I'm not saying all of them aren't staged, but there's enough of them that exist to know that some of them are probably genuine, which is frustrating. But just so the bigger thing that I pulled away that kind of connects with what you were talking about is just. For me, I related to the discontentment. I did not pick up anything on the whole, like, searching for meaningness, finding meaning. Like, it was just I'm doing something because I have things I have to take care of, but it's just become mundane. It's become routine. It's become lethargic. And in that circle of just trying to get stuff done because things need to be done, we have to go do taxes because it's required. But as someone myself who doesn't understand a lot of taxes, and it's the reason why I don't do my own taxes because I just don't want to screw it up because I don't understand half of it. Like, I get the whole just like, we did what you told us to, and we still don't understand why you're doing it. Like, I relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, in that, struggling to keep your family afloat. Outside of the migration issues that are brought up, how they are migrants, outside of the existential stuff that you get in the sci-fi stuff. I'm just like, that was the part that I related to the most, was just like, I've had many jobs that have just been mundane. No, I'm not saying they're meaningless, but like many jobs where I'm just like, why am I here?
Where it's hard to find the meaning.
Like, right.
It's not that they're meaningless, but it's hard to find the meaning.
And we're all designed differently to where like someone can be a SpongeBob. Someone can really love working at a restaurant. I'm envious of those people.
Me too.
And so like I related to the laundromat. I'm like, just mundane. It just
same thing every day.
I related to that, and that symbology of just watching the laundry circle rotate. I was like, wow, like that fits in so well with that.
There's another circle.
I wanted that was my 2 cents with what you guys were going back with, but just more like how I received it. Discontentment, but trying to keep your family afloat and not knowing how to communicate to your family because it's just because the generational thing of not being communicated from your parents. Like,
I relate very strongly with that. I have had more jobs than just about any person I know, especially at my age.
Yeah.
I've had
Jeff, it's true.
I've had many
there
jobs.
It is. It's fact checked.
And I have never really been fully content in a job, and I wish that I could be.
Yep,
it's kind of miserable.
6 months to a year is when I start to be like, I'm tired of this.
Yeah, and my wife and I always joke that my ideal career would be a career where I can have a new career every 2 years.
That sounds really nice.
Like, there's too many things that I want to try. I feel like there's a lot of things that I'm good at or I would have interest in or whatever it is. And it's very, very difficult for me too. I mean, the longest I've ever stayed at a job was 3 years ever. And that was very recently. So I relate to that.
Yeah.
Strongly. You know, I want to start my own business, and I worry that in a year,
what if I get bored?
What if I get bored? And then it basically ends up paralyzing me, and I don't end up doing it.
It's not that you are self-aware of. It's not often I come across a place where I'm like, yes, this is long term.
Yeah.
Even if it's in a medium that I enjoy, it may be something I enjoy, but then the life things happen of like, oh, this isn't going to fund this. And then it's like, okay, now I got to go back to a job that's more fund worthy versus passion worthy.
Yes.
Right.
And then it's just trying to balance that. Yeah.
Where I'm at now is it's really hard. It's really interesting. The work that I do, I feel like it's kind of boring, but I have been very diligent in trying to be content, and it's genuinely made my job better.
Nice.
And
awesome.
It's been
Paul
like
talks about that
conscious,
as a discipline.
Yeah, it's been a conscious like effort all the time. Like, yes, I might just be doing this little thing for an HVAC company that nobody knows about, but it's important to the people that are going to use it, and they need that. So it should be important to me because it's my job, and it's helped a lot, like a tremendous amount. Yeah. But I can tell you, I'm just a serial job hopper, and I'm trying not to be anymore. I'm not even that passionate about my career. Like, I don't care that much about it. I'm good enough at it. I continue to get a little bit better.
meet your needs. I'm assuming
it does all of that.
Yep.
But I have friends that are in the same space as me that'll be like, bro, check out this new feature and this new that and this and the other. I'm like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't care at all.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to get excited about those kinds of things. And it's kind of a crappy place to be, honestly. You feel like, why can't I be like that? That would be great. My life might be easier if it could be like that, but I'm just not wired that way. And I totally relate to that. And I totally relate to them, and especially Evelyn. She wants to be a singer. She's getting a karaoke machine and
massage therapist,
a software developer,
all kinds of different things. And boy, I've been down that road. I can't tell you how many times I've come up with a new idea and a new thing I start to try, and I start to go down.
It actually is a running joke of how often Steve is like, I got a new idea for a business I'm gonna launch.
Steven,
most of them are pretty good.
No, they're good ideas. Yeah. Just like I also
if my job could be coming up with good ideas that I don't execute on, I would be a millionaire.
Yeah, that's like half of marketing.
Yeah.
This is very eerie, Steven. You have a lot in common in this category.
All right, I've got really one last thing, and then we need to get into wrap up. Believe it or not, this episode's flown by, I think. Okay. But we're getting to the end of our time.
I just looked at the time. I was like, holy cow, we've been talking that long.
It is 1 a.m.
So here's an observation I had late in the movie. This movie is basically a Christmas Carol.
Hold on a second.
I want to say I disagree, but I can't tell you why, so I'm just trying not to say anything yet.
Think it through. Think about the main beats of a Christmas Carol. It's all here.
Kind of.
There's no caroling.
There's no caroling in a Christmas Carol either.
There is in the Muppets
right,
version.
But the ghosts...
That's a joke.
Yeah, so like in a Christmas Carol, you have a person who's very dissatisfied with life.
Yeah.
Who...
It leaks into other people's
and
relationships.
And it's miserable, and it's
okay.
affecting all his relationships.
Okay, that checks out.
And then, over the course of one day, experiences what his life has been like, what's brought him to where he is, how things could have been different, and through that is radically transformed in his outlook on life.
Yeah.
And that's really what this movie is.
That's fair.
And down to the bones, like... Obviously not the way the story tells that tale, but yeah.
Sure.
I guess the beginning of the journey to the end of the journey is the same.
Yeah.
I see that, yeah.
That makes sense. I'm fine with it. I'll allow it.
And if we're talking about comparisons, I would throw it in that same category of like Groundhog Day. That type of movie where
that one took several hundred years.
Right. Well, but that idea of like being in that circle of something until you've achieve the specific thing that gets you out of it.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, so I guess I didn't see it like that, yeah.
I had friends that lived in... a
Groundhog Day situation?
No, that lived where Groundhog Day was filmed.
So
I've been...
Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania?
No, it's not where it was filmed. It was filmed in Illinois. But I've been in that gazebo, I've been to the diner, I've been to all those places. Oh, yeah. Many times.
Was there polka music being played while you were there?
No.
That's a disappointment.
No. I love polka music.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Did it snow the next day when you got to that town?
I mean, it snows in Illinois pretty often.
Okay.
Yeah.
But was it snowing when you were there?
Yeah. Did you go to bed and then you wake up and you
I've been there
out?
a lot of times.
Really?
Yes.
And you got stuck in traffic, and then you had to turn back and go back.
Woodstock, I think, was the name of the city, but it's been a long time and I can't remember. But anyways, we had friends that lived there. Yeah.
I had a couple quotes I just want to throw out. I feel like we definitely got into the meat of this movie, but just some other things, minor things that stuck out to me, just phrasing wise. And again, more on the emotional level that I connected with. Waymond, it's the line that my wife also, for her, was like the pinnacle, definitive. It didn't define the movie, but for her, it was like
had a lot of impact.
Right. It was when Waymond was in that. It was like espionage spy dressed.
Oh yeah.
In his back. He goes, "You think because I'm kind that it means I'm naive, and maybe I am. It's strategic and necessary. This is how I fight." But then, if you watch how the rest of the movie plays out, you go back and watch just how Waymond reacts. He does things intentionally to fight tension with
whimsy,
joyous.
Absolutely,
like
googly eyes.
Yeah,
yep.
And
sort of dancing with customers.
And when he's
things.
kung fuing, he's not doing it in a way where it's angsty. He's doing it in a way where it's silly.
Yeah,
but it's still in a protective, loving way of the people he's fighting for. Like, he maintained the whole movie of being true to how he carries out himself and how he believes he lives his life. And so like that line would be how I would sum up his character. Like,
you know, it's interesting in the movie, Michelle Yeoh's character calls him her silly husband derisively, but then later lovingly.
Yeah, you're right.
And the reason I related to this situation and specifically to this character, first of all, he's hilarious. Like I thought he was the best part of this movie.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Waymond.
Yeah. But saying like, I hate confrontation. Hate it. Now, obviously I don't know Kung Fu. My wife and I literally had an argument today. We're good now, but like had an argument today and I couldn't help but try to cut it with a joke. Try to slap down the tension with a goof. And that's how I deflect. That's how I hoping it resolves to something like we just laugh it off. That's how I fight. And I was like, oh man, like it just hit me. And
I very much do the same thing, but simultaneously, I love confrontation.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous of that.
I'm just good at getting out of it by being charming and goofy, I guess. Yes, I'm complimenting myself and just calling myself charming, but
own it, man.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
I am what I am. But I won't lie. I definitely, and it's probably the libertarian in me and I mean, just most of my views in general are sort of not mainstream. So it's not uncommon at all for me to get into conflicts with people, and it just kind of comes with the territory. And I won't lie. I used to be a massive Facebook fire starter. I would just like say something that would get people going, and then just walk away and laugh at all of the fires that I've caused. So I love confrontation.
And you still do that, just not as much as you used to.
Way less. But yes, I just do it to my friends instead.
I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not scared of confrontation. I don't seek it, but I'm not like.
You do rise up to meet it.
Yes.
If it finds you, I've loved that about you, Nelson. Like you do, like, oh, let's do this. And mostly like a respectful conversational. Like I've never seen you fight someone. There's still time.
There were days,
but like I do kind of see your whole demeanor change when let's get into this.
We're talking.
And
you're wrong about something?
And I'm always the one that just starts to adjust myself and go, oh no, it's happening. Like I go all, Steve Carell on.
You get both uncomfortable, but also I can see on your face you're enjoying it.
I've learned a lot from embracing confrontation. There is benefits from it.
And there are healthy, respectful ways to have confrontation.
Absolutely.
Definitely. You got to know when to pump the brakes and walk away, especially if the other person or yourself is you can tell when things take a turn, and that's when you need to stop.
Unfortunately, the way you learn that is by getting it wrong.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Oh. Yeah. And unfortunately for me, getting it wrong many times. Many times.
Yep.
But yeah.
And I do want to say, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning, but we will come back to this movie was rated R.
Yes.
I think that was the one thing I missed when I was going through this.
Yeah.
Rated R. So that'll come up with our wrap-up questions, but I do remember not saying that. So, okay. So the first question is, would you guys recommend this?
To the right person, yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Same caveat, 100%.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's for me, I enjoyed it more on the end of the entertainment style. Like the heartwarming ending, I appreciated the whole mother-daughter reconnection stuff. Like I appreciated that. There were some things in it there were some cheesy moments I wasn't expecting, and it kind of felt like when what movie was it? I referred to it when I was talking to my wife about this. Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh, okay.
I love Taika Waititi, but this movie specifically, I think he overdid it with some of the goofiness.
Yeah,
and it's the same. And I actually didn't know it was the same guys that did Swiss Army Man. So now knowing that, I'm like, I feel better about it. But like the hot dog fingers, some of the, I don't want to say gimmicks, but there was some stuff in it where I'm like, that was just weird.
Yeah, some of the gags.
Some of the gags.
The Ratatouille stuff.
Right.
I love it. I just think it's fun.
I laughed at it, but like, because I didn't know what I was expecting.
Sure.
I wasn't expecting hot dog fingers, so it just caught me off guard.
It is one of those things that the second time through, because you know it's there, you're able to appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I would absolutely did recommend it. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be going into it. Okay. Next question. It's rated R. Would you guys change the rating?
No, I wouldn't change the rating.
Either, yeah.
I want to ask a corollary question.
I'll allow it.
Do you think this movie if you stripped back the stuff that makes it rated R, do you think that this movie could still work as a PG-13 or PG?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
Okay.
I kind of think some movies need to be R because of themes, essentially. Just, I know this is going to be a controversial topic, but I don't mean
Nelson
necessarily R as in like, there are certain movies that just the audience, a 13-year-old, in my opinion, would really never get what this movie is trying to say.
Sure.
You would have to strip it back so much to get it to a level where someone in a PG-13 audience would get it or enjoy it, that I don't think it would be worth doing.
I'm now very curious to see how you would do this message for a child audience.
Oh, it would be. Yeah.
I think you could do a TV edit to make it viewable on cable. I'm not saying you should view it that way, because there's only a couple parts that I was like, oh, outside. I mean, there's a couple F-bombs.
And honestly,
like,
it's one of those rare situations where the strong language is actually used to drive character development.
Yeah.
It's not super bloody.
No.
It's
certainly not a hard R.
No.
No. But I guess what I mean is that sometimes I think you should shoot for R just because it restricts people that you don't really want the movie to be for anyways. Yeah. And I know that's silly, but...
No, I get it. I get it. I see what you're saying. This movie came out in 2022, so our third question may not be as relevant, but has this aged well?
Yeah.
I was hoping for a little bit of a rebuttal.
I genuinely didn't know the budget, and I'm blown away that it's that low.
Yeah, it's a very affordable movie.
It is. They got every dollar's worth out of.
I just read an article they're remaking it next year, but it's this movie. This movie was good. I definitely think it's over the past year and a half. It's aged well. Yeah.
You saying that because it's been a recurring theme reminded me of something. Why is it no longer on the top 250? And I think I have an answer.
Oh, okay.
So
that's a great question.
It's a polarizing movie for people I know.
Movies again that are. This is a great question to ask. Like, why?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So go ahead.
So
this is nice.
Here's why I think that this movie fell off the top 250. Something that gives a movie a lot of staying power, based on what we've seen as a trend over the last year or so, is a lot of these movies in the top 250, a major theme is finding meaning, finding identity. And this movie is very explicitly about there is no meaning.
Yeah.
You have no identity. You're just who you are in this universe. You're different in a different universe. And I think that as much as that's an idea people want to grapple with, it's not an idea people enjoy digesting.
Sure.
I agree with you with what you're saying. I don't agree that's how this movie resolves, though. This movie...
Well, we're going to take it all the way back.
This movie clearly goes to the importance of, not necessarily the meaning of your own life-defining life, but like the importance of having something that's valuable to fight for.
Sure.
It's like, and that in itself is a meaning.
But so the resolution
this movie
also
is
requires...
not pro-meaningless.
No. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the intellectual labor throughout the movie to get to that conclusion is not going to be enjoyable for a lot of people.
Definitely. For me, for the people, I've recommended this movie to a number of people. Of course, I've forgotten about some parts after doing it and went, well, they'll get over it. They're adults. And I would say it's 50-50 split if people like it or not. It's really goofy. It's really silly and over the top, you know, and all those kinds of things. Sometimes that just turns people off immediately. The hot dog fingers, the ratatouille stuff, the rocks. I mean, even the rocks. I've had people mention to me they did not like the rocks. That was so stupid. There's a lot of people that will fall into this is really, really stupid, which is a shame because it's not stupid.
No.
It's actually very smart.
Yeah.
This is really good absurdism.
Yeah, exactly.
Where there are things that seem like they have no purpose but do.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the point of absurdism.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
there is really bad absurdism where it's just random
nonsense.
And has no meaning.
Yes.
Yeah. Would this be in your personal top 250?
Yeah.
It would be. And I think I haven't been keeping track. And that's a binary scale that's absurd, and that's kind of why we use it.
Right.
I think more often than not, my answer is no.
Yeah.
But for this, yeah.
I probably won't watch this one in a while. I won't go back to it immediately. I enjoyed it. It's currently on the top half of the movies we have watched.
Okay.
So I assume maybe it'd be at the bottom of my 250, but it was a good movie. So I definitely think at this point, at the rate we're going, this would be up there in the top 250 best movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say. This, like, again, I'm positively neutral about this movie.
I'm
right there.
It's so unique.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. That
And I wanted to ask you guys, because like I've never seen a Wes Anderson movie.
I've seen all of them.
And so I'm curious if
I've not seen Atomic. What's the new one?
Asteroid City.
Asteroid
I
City.
haven't seen it yet because it just
and
came
I've
out.
not seen the newest one that you said was a dud.
French Dispatch.
I've not seen French
Not
Dispatch.
my favorite.
I can't compare them because I've never seen them, but like when I see the trailers of a Wes Anderson movie, I kind of get that same vibe of it's they're doing some abstract type things. Like, and so when I watched this movie, I enjoyed it because I felt like I was watching a piece of art more so than I was watching a movie that told a story. And that's I think that's what takes me on the positive side of it. I was like, the absurd things made it more artistic than it was a story. And I liked that.
I'll let you answer
And
first.
I feel like that's how I would view a Wes Anderson movie, which I'm excited to watch one eventually.
I would say that's where the similarities end, is
Okay,
that
okay.
they're very artistic, but Wes Anderson movies
Okay.
they're story driven, character driven,
Okay.
but they're very artistic.
You're a big fan of- big fan of
yes,
those?
very
Okay,
big fan.
cool.
Yeah.
So Wes Anderson is quirky and whimsical.
Yeah.
Whereas this is gonzo.
Yeah.
Like it's
Okay.
just absurd.
Gotcha.
Wes Anderson movies aren't really absurd. They're just
No, they're just quirky and
Yeah, I
weird.
was gonna say, 'cause
And then
Asteroid
also
City, being now that we're doing a movie podcast and stuff, like I'm actually like I'm trying to be broader in the movies that I'm trying to watch as they come out. And the Asteroid City trailer seems a little bit more quirky.
quirky, definitely.
Okay,
But
yes.
start with like Moonrise Kingdom or Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both fantastic.
I would also add both Everything Everywhere All at Once and Swiss Army Man, which are the same directors. Both of these, at the end of the movie, you've gone on a bit of an emotional and intellectual journey,
Mhm.
and with Wes Anderson movies, you haven't.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nothing to be learned from a Wes Anderson
They're
movie.
just movies
But
with a
they're fun.
story. They're great. They're,
Incredible acting, incredible directing, incredible cinematography.
There's a couple on
Yeah, there
Top
is.
250, so we will be getting into them shortly. I
But
assume.
there's less like claims about what the world is
Yeah,
or how
no.
people should be.
right.
other than a character's motivation saying something like that. But that's just any movie, really.
Yeah.
Both of the Daniels movies have me excited for anything else they release in the future.
Yeah, I'd also add as a distinction between Wes Anderson and the Daniels. You could take any still from a Wes Anderson movie, and it looks like a Wes Anderson movie.
It's extremely distinct.
Yes. Whereas Swiss Army Man and Everything Everywhere All at Once, there are some directorial and camera work choices that are very similar.
Mhm.
That when I read that, I was like, "Oh, I see it now," but like I wouldn't have connected it.
Okay.
Or the Turn Down for What music video.
Is that them?
Yeah, that music
Wait.
video rules.
That makes sense. I've
Yeah.
seen that music video. I didn't.
Yeah, they
Well,
did that
that's
one too.
Awesome.
They did that one too. Yep.
All right. Anything else?
That's all I've got. What are we on for next week, Nils?
Ooh, that's a great question.
You don't know because I know.
What are we doing next week?
We are discussing a movie and the truth claims and biases that it. Oh,
Can't wait.
On the Waterfront.
Oh, that's
That's a
right.
good movie.
I don't know anything about it. I don't even know if it involves water.
I have a really interesting trivia fact about this movie,
Mhm.
but I'm not confident about it enough to recite it right now. But I will have it ready for next time we record.
Awesome. So
I can't wait to hear that trivia fact.
join us next week for On the Waterfront.
That's all, folks.
That's all. Thank you. Thanks for listening. We had a great time putting this together for you.
To join the conversation, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Silver Screen Biases.
And on Twitter at Screen Biases.
We believe in value for value, so if you found value in our show, we ask you to consider supporting us.
Links to our social media and support can be found in the show notes.